Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Shea. Thank you for being here on the podcast, episode 7 of One to Come Up, where we go over our guests' entire lives, see who they are personally, professionally, then we see why they are the way they are. So it's a cool time right now. It's 2 days till Christmas, 9 days till the New Year. What do your plans look like for this week?
What does my plans look like? So Jan 1 or 1/1/25 is a big go live for a number of campaigns. We do a lot of work in the better for you space. So brands that position as, a primary reason to believe being something health related. So we end up doing a lot of launches on 1/1. So we've about 200 or so that we got to get out the door.
What,
So
200?
um, more stressful for my team than myself. And I'd say over the years we've gotten pretty good about handling that demand shock. We pull
Yeah.
the due dates on creative and things that brands need to submit to us forward a couple weeks when we get to this part of the year. But no, we're excited. A lot of really cool stuff happening. 2025 is shaping up to be a great year.
Wow, that's amazing. 200 just right off the bat must be like an insanely busy time for you guys. But that's good, making money.
That's right.
Um, so kind of where we start the podcast, like I said, we go over your entire life. We kind of started earlier so I could find out about you. And so you grew up in Long Island, New York. Your father was a fireman, entrepreneur. You had some of your own companies, and that kind of seems to run in the blood there with you guys. So I don't know, I guess explain your earliest entrepreneurship there and your first experience.
Sure. Yeah, no, sounds good. So nailed it. Grew up in Mineola on Long Island. Parents were a school teacher and a firefighter. And my dad, on the side of being a firefighter, had started a small like sign shop. So think like the facade of a building, 1-800 Flowers. They're fabricating and installing those signs. It's called Mineola Signs and Awning, still around today. And then my oldest sister was also involved in entrepreneurship. She went to NYU Stern, 2008. Instead of going back to Goldman Sachs for a sales and trade job, she started a company called City Slips, which was a foldable ballet flats and a wristlet that opened up to a tote bag for your heels. That company got acquired shortly thereafter, and she started angel investing in the consumer space and now runs a fund called Divergent Capital, which is on Fund 2. It's made a number of consumer investments. So always had the like aggressive overexposure to it growing up. I think there's a there, and I think that set me down this path. In terms of my earliest entrepreneurship journeys, there's a pretty funny story my dad likes to tell when he got called to the principal's office when I was in second grade because I was photoshopping Pokemon cards and selling them to my classmates. And he tells a pretty funny like, and you want like to the principal and you want me to be mad about this, like are we sure? I feel like
Yeah.
this is sort of like a scrappy that's my son type moment. Obviously that's not what he said, and that's not what we did, but that's how far back it goes. I would say the first like real taste that I was able to sink my teeth into was a company called Trendworthy Tees. It was a t-shirt company of which I think there have been countless of across the country, formed in high school. But Trendworthy Tees took a bunch of trending social content on Twitter and then formed t-shirt designs against those or against those trends. So whatever seemed to be trending was sort of capitalizing on that momentum and building artwork against that to try to take advantage of those viral moments. Um, I ended up doing that in my senior year of high school. I think the last year we got to about $30,000 in sales, which,
Wow.
is not a ton, but like for someone who's
Yeah,
17, that's like the
that's
largest sum
amazing.
of money I've ever seen. And so I was able to buy my first car and a bunch of cool stuff like that, which is super special. But I would say once you get a taste of it, it's really hard to go back. So I did Boston College undergrad, finance, computer science, Chinese. I started a company called McMaster-Carr Supply Company. I'm happy to dive into that, but long story short, McMaster-Carr Supply Company brings me to Chicago, and I enrolled at the University of Chicago for a nights and weekends MBA focused on entrepreneurship, statistics, and marketing. And that's really where what is now known as Adgile Media Group got started. And I'm sure we'll dive into all that, but that's really the high level sort of the journey as to how I ended up where I am today.
Cool. So So you started McMaster-Carr, or did he work for them?
I worked for them. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
big, like 7,000
yeah.
employee company.
You probably,
I would explain it like Amazon.com, except it's all hardware. So screws, nuts, bolts, selling into like a SpaceX or a Tesla. And they have about 700,000 SKUs, and they own the maintenance, repair, and operation sort of category.
so it's also kind of interesting because when you first went to Boston College, you got your degree in like computer science, and Chinese. There's stuff you necessarily weren't interested in, and then you kind of got some real world experience, and then you went back to college a little bit. So you had some interesting thought processes there. Certainly not the typical first bachelor's and master's. You kind of went all over. So maybe explain your story there and your thought process with.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was advice I'd gotten from one of my sisters. I have three older sisters, but my the disciplines I chose in undergrad, so finance, computer science, and Chinese, were not really driven by passion. They were really more like a calculated business decision. What I had thought, or I guess what I had learned from my sisters is when you go into recruiting and you have all these colleges on campus looking to, okay, who from Boston College should I hire? The reality is none of us are going to have the skill set that's needed on the job. And, we're all too green. We don't have that experience. And so the only thing you can actually sort of make an assessment on when you look at all these different students from the employer's perspective is who can learn what's needed very quickly. So really, when I was doing finance, computer science, and Chinese, it was not because I was obsessed with those topics. It was really because I was trying to signal to the market, like, listen, investment banker, like I don't know how to do what you're going to need me to do. However, I have shown mastery of some pretty complicated concepts here, and I hope that that's good signal as to what I'll be able to do on the job if you hired me. So that's really like the how the undergrad academia played out. I will say and it was like pick the safe things, right? That was always around safety and like optimizing for the least amount of risk. Then once I actually got into the workforce, and once I ended back up at University of Chicago, that was really special and cool for me because it was like, okay, now you're okay, like you have a job, you're like doing fine. There's not as much potential perceived risk. So going to business school, I got like a second lease at restarting academia, and I made it very tailored around what actually interested me. So everyone at University of Chicago was trying to figure out, okay, consulting or investment banking. For me, I was like startups, marketing, math. Like these are the things that I actually like and enjoy. And it was cool to sort of do it all over again through a much more relaxed, more passionate lens.
Yeah. So it was at UChicago there that you met your co-founder Max, and that's kind of a cool story. You just first day you're there, you went to a party, met him, and within hours you kind of started what was originally Adjacent Media.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
yes, if you had anything to say about that, or
Yeah, no. So I was not the one with the idea. I was the one with a little bit of a technical background, and Max was the one with the idea. But long story short, I went to Los Angeles with McMaster-Carr right out of undergrad at BC, and then eventually McMaster moved me to headquarters in Chicago. I had just moved there. I had texted my friends from Boston College saying, "Hey, moving to Chicago. Does anybody have good friends here?" I literally know zero people. And so Max is one of the first people I got introduced to by one of my college roommates at Boston College that grew up with Max. Um, and so yeah, first time we met, you know, 3 hours later, we're in the corner of the party, just spitting ideas back and forth of things that we can build and should build. Um, and one of them stuck. It was what was known as adjacent advertising. It was all digital screens as opposed to where we ended up today. That following summer, we were working together on soldering GPS chips to Raspberry Pis to screens and drilling screens onto doors. It was one that like it was an idea until it wasn't, and then it was in the real world, and that was the launching pad through which all of the crazy journey started from.
okay, and it's also kind of cool with Adjacent Technologies. You went through Venture Challenge, right, at UChicago, kind of like a Y Combinator for them, and that
Yeah.
was a very difficult experience. And then where you finished ultimately. Um, So that could you explain that story, because I think that's like very typical for an entrepreneur there.
Yeah, for sure. So the New Venture Challenge, every campus these days or any competitive campus these days has one. It's like an accelerator challenge where um, they help incubate your organization and you can pitch to venture capitalists at the end, like a demo day style. And so there's some cool companies that came out of that program. But I think we looked at that as a business challenge, like who could advance their business forward the most. In which case, if that were the criteria with which we were evaluated under, I would put us in the top quartile of companies. But at the end of the day, it was a business pitch competition. So your actual progress and how far you advanced your company in that 3-month window actually didn't really matter. And so while we got a lot done, we put screens on trucks that were traveling from Chicago to Savannah, Georgia, and they were displaying ads and stuff like that, which I'd say was more than other classmates had done. We didn't really focus or spend too much time thinking about the business plan that we were pitching to the audience. And so I say it a lot on podcasts, but we got dragged through the mud in that experience. We were shown a lot of tough love. And there were two things people thought were wrong with that business. One was the capex of the screens, which were really expensive. Again, the first model was all digital screens being drilled into the sides and backs of trucks. So they were concerned about the capex, which you can get around with some clever financing solutions. And we just didn't come from marketing. And what we didn't know is, that truck traveling from Chicago to Savannah, Georgia, you can't just turn the lights on and get McDonald's across every exit in the way that we thought we could, because media is allocated at the national, regional, and local level. And so because our trucks were going from Chicago to Savannah, Georgia, we weren't nationwide, couldn't get that budget. Because they weren't staying in Chicago or staying in Savannah, we couldn't get the regional budget. And so the only thing we could actually vie for from a demand side was the local budgets, which meant selling into every individual franchisee. So while it was a lot of tough love, I feel very grateful that it was at the beginning of our UChicago experience, because we got the subsequent 2 years to take the feedback that we got, iterate, and continue to work on the business model until it became Adgile Media Group, which we've taken to market and is sort of the model we're operating with today.
Cool. So how'd you guys go forward from that? Because I watched another one of your podcasts, and it was kind of like a little bit crushing for you that you
Yeah.
had to watch, and it didn't go forward. So how'd you guys go forward, get back on your feet there, pick yourselves up, and
Yeah. No, I mean, at that point, we'd been working on it for like a year. We had put in some of our own money into it. And so we were very much at an inflection point. We're like, all right, we just got destroyed here. A lot of people don't believe in us. Should we keep going, or should we, hang our hats up and like just go take the safe marketing job at BCG or McKinsey or something like that? But ultimately, during a practice pitch that we were doing at the Polsky Center at UChicago, someone's son was in the audience, and that individual was Mitch Gordon. His son Josh Gordon was in the audience. He's like, "Hey, listen, I know you guys don't know me, but my father is actually like quite involved at the intersection of logistics and finance. Maybe you guys should take a call with him." And so we did, and ultimately, Mitch Gordon came on as our CEO. He's no longer at the company, but I don't think the company would exist had we not brought him into the folds, because he, brought or breathed all new life into the company. He motivated Max and I. He made us really excited, because he just was someone who was like, this definitely should be a business. I think we can make a couple tweaks, and I'll come on and I'll help you guys, and we'll bring this thing to market. And that's ultimately we did. So external validation, I think, is what kept it alive when we had so many people who were not validating the business idea. It just took one, I think, to get us excited about it.
wow, that's amazing that by a complete stroke of luck there, by chance, he happened to be there. Well, his son did, and then his son
Yeah.
recommended. Wow. And all right, so then this time that you guys eventually did launch, that was like early, what's called 2020, right? Like, but then that's when the pandemic happened, and that's not really the best time. So another like
Yeah.
stomach there as well. So how'd you guys like manage with that hurdle?
Yeah, no, starting an outdoor advertising company in the depths of the pandemic, probably not the best move. However, looking back, and it's so easy to look back and think everything like happened how it was supposed to. But ultimately, we had no like real expenses at that time. It was just Max and I, like we weren't really taking a salary. So, and there's not hardware really with the new model. It's sort of asset light, overheads minimized. There's a lot of variable costs, not a lot of fixed costs. And so all of the other players in the industry were getting destroyed because of the pandemic and because they had real costs and they had payroll and they had these fixed costs that you can't really do much about in that situation. And so I do look back at that experience and going, okay, we were launching when everyone else was playing defense and we were able to play offense because we didn't have any of this baggage that came along with maturity. And so how did we make it work? Well, you know, when we first started the company, we operated campaigns at a loss intentionally. So regardless of what's happening, I think everyone likes getting something on the cheap. And especially in the beginning, we were like giving these campaigns away below the cost to actually even get them on the truck because we were trying to collect data and build case studies and validate that we actually had a business that could grow into something. So the first couple cycles were just, listen, we're giving this stuff away. I understand there's not a lot of people out there right now, but it's like as close to free as physically possible. And so that attracted our first like cohort of brand partners. And then, you know, things started to ease up a little bit. We had good case studies. Then we started to sell campaigns at break even. So just covering our costs, you know, just the production installation and data costs would be covered. And then eventually things really started to, you know, loosen up a little bit. We started offering campaigns extremely profitable. Like we put huge margin on there because we were trying to test how high can you actually go until people say, you know what, like this isn't interesting to me. Is it 5 grand? Is it 10 grand? Like what is that number where people walk away? We're trying to figure out the price elasticity of the equation. And so that all happened on, you know, between call it 2020 to end of 2021. And that ultimately ties into the actual fundraise story for our seed rounds and why they invested in, you know, why testing those different pricing points was important.
Okay, so I guess for the viewers that maybe don't know what Agile Media is, like as extensively as I do, they might
Sure.
be confused, like maybe about your business model, and it's not necessarily like digital technology on your trucks, but which is very unique as well, and that's something that allowed you to thrive. So if you could like maybe explain then your business model here a little bit and
Sure.
about the trucks.
Yeah. So Agile Media Group turned last mile delivery trucks traveling the densest urban areas across North America into mobile billboards on behalf of brands. So you have all these trucks that are already out there. You know, they're generally blank, they're unbranded. We're essentially just taking something that already exists and extracting greater utility out of it by retrofitting it with advertising for Planet Fitness or for PepsiCo and brands like that. Um, you know, you look if you want something to sort of sink your teeth into, you know, there's if you're in New York, there's these bus wrap companies like Vector Media. If you're in a major city, there's probably Firefly, Uber, or Lyft, which all have those taxi toppers. So, you know, there's like analogs and adjacencies that I think viewers might be able to tie this to. But very simply, we turn last mile delivery trucks into mobile billboards. Now, the more like nuanced, interesting part of this is twofold. One is a behavioral psychology reality. And so, you know, we went to our clients who kept coming back, said, listen, this is weird, this is new, yet you're so passionate about it. Why is that? And their response over and over again was, Tom, we like this form of advertising because it's the only form of advertising no one knows is advertising. And so we took that, ran a long form behavioral psychology study on it, and found that 96.3% of people who see a branded truck believe that truck is delivering product on behalf of the advertised for brand, whether that is true or not. So if we wrapped a truck in PepsiCo branding, pretty much everyone was looking at it different than a billboard or different than a taxi top, going, oh, wow, all of these trucks are here. I guess all of my neighbors and peers are ordering from that brand. So we're able to like essentially create a bandwagon and halo effect by nature of our advertising format. So that was an important one. That's what I call the virtual fleet effect. That's like a huge differentiator and why we are what I would call consumer goods specialists. You know, we don't really do a ton in the like B2B HR software space. We're really like, you know, food, beverage, pet, beauty, stuff like that. Then the other one, which is a bit more nuanced but super interesting, is our ability to attribute offline media exposures to online or in-store or in-app purchase events. So every truck has a GPS in it. Off that GPS, we're able to build a moving geofence that capture people's mobile phones.
Wow.
Once we capture people's mobile phones, we can do a ton with it. We can get to all of their other internet-connected devices, so their desktop, tablet, connected TV. We can figure out their demographics. We can figure out their psychographics. We can hit them with ads on Facebook, TikTok, etc. And most importantly, we can see, do they convert on behalf of the advertised for brand? So if we're advertised for Planet Fitness, I can see, did they visit the Planet Fitness website and start a membership? Did they download the Planet Fitness app and add a credit card? Did they walk into a physical Planet Fitness gym location? And so really, to summarize that, we figured out return on ad spend for offline media. Everyone used to buy outdoor media, and it's been around forever. It's like the OG advertising format, but no one could cleanly answer, is this working? Is this a good use of my media spend? In the way that Facebook and TikTok, you sort of can, right? Like there's clear attribution. They click on the thing, they buy something. Like it's very black and white. And I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that this is as black and white as those channels, but we've meaningfully and materially moved it forward in a way that it looks and feels a lot more like a Facebook and a TikTok buy than it used to.
Wow, that's incredible because I guess I didn't even myself understand it as in depth as you were just explained it, that your truck drives through and somehow it connects to everybody's phone and it gets the technology and it gets the information from there. So how does like something how does that happen?
Sure. Yeah. So um, if you look at applications on people's phones that are free and have a location component, so think dating apps, weather app, navigation apps, those things aren't free. And that's probably not that surprising. They're monetizing by selling digital ad inventory. So if you're on like weather.com, you can sponsor a banner ad at the bottom. And they're selling anonymized location data to folks like ourselves. So there are exchanges essentially that partner with 500,000 plus mobile apps on people's phones to buy and resell location data from people. And it's all anonymized. So like when I capture your phone, Danny, your phone is XYZ123. I can never get what's called PII, or personally identifiable information. I can't get your name. I can't get your phone number. I can't get your email address. I can't get your physical address. Otherwise, it's not compliant. But I can get some like broad strokes data. Okay, this is XYZ123's phone. Here's his age range. Here's his education range. Here's his household income range. Here's his interests based on what else he's doing on his phone. And so you can get some, level of data, and you can follow that data. And you can say, okay, does that phone make a purchase? Does one of his devices, not just his phone, but his desktop, does that make a purchase after some amount of time? What's important though is that you're pairing anonymized data sets. So you can follow like the continuity of a hashed character string, but I can never tie it to Danny.
Wow, that's an incredible technology there and ability that you guys have. And kind of kind of sounds like 1984 a little bit, but not really. Um,
This is tech that's existed in the digital sphere for like 2 decades.
really?
It's just the first time it's, ads following you around online and stuff. It's nothing new. It's just we're one of the first to bring it to the physical world.
Yeah. So I guess that also answers the questions like our phones listening to us and in the way they are.
They're
Um,
listening to your actions. They're not, I don't know. Well, I guess I'm not the source of truth. I don't think they're listening to our voice, but I'm not going on record to say that.
yeah. All right, that's kind of funny. Uh, okay, so then you mentioned like in end of 2021 things started to pick up for you, like it started snowballing, you got more people, and then you did some initial like fundraising, right? And you went for 1 million, but you got 5 million, and then so how was that?
Yeah, sure. So we did a $300,000 family and friends round on a capped safe during 2020. I think the average check size was $5,000. So it literally went to like every person we knew, including our elementary school teachers, asking them to invest. And then, we had gotten to about $500,000 in revenue off of that investment, and not like profitably, right? Like we were burning it for the sake of trying to build this company. But at that point, um, I was trying to just close out that round at 1 million. So we'd done the 300,000 when we didn't have any revenue. Now we have 500K in revenue. I am seeking 700K to get to a clean million in total funding to, continue to build this business, which I felt like we were sort of suffocating because we couldn't give it enough resources, despite there being interest and demand from the market. And so we went out to raise $700,000, and in the process somehow ended up with five. Granted, it was a very, very different time. This is the end of 2021. This is the end of a 15-year bull market. But ultimately, we had, proven a lot in not a lot of time and with not a lot of resources. So, we were trying to raise $700,000. We met someone who said, "Hey, listen, I would like you to consider our fund leading a seed round." And originally we were thinking $2 to $3 million. But when we got down there with a financial model, and credit to them because they were absolutely right, they were like, "Listen, you think you need 2 to 3? Our experience here says you need 5 to 6." Like, founders almost always under forecast the amount of capital that's going to be needed to build their business. And I'm not saying just pick a big number to be irresponsible about it. We did 2 to 3 because we thought that's what we needed. But what you don't know as a first-time founder is all of the mistakes you're going to make along the way that cost resources. So we ended up raising 5 at the end of 2021. Have a really, really awesome cap table around us and people in our corner, and they continue to support us to this day. And so we haven't done like a serious institutional round since then. And who knows? I'm not sure if we will. Profitable company. If we raise again, I think it will be because there's an interesting opportunity that makes us think we need to raise, whether that's a new vertical or a potential acquisition target or something like that.
That's really cool. And something that we've overlooked a little bit, these past couple years that we've been talking about 2020, 2021, is you had like a full-time job as well, right? During this time, and
Yeah.
this was like a weekends thing. So how long was that going on for? Like, why didn't you dedicate full time to this? Or
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, high level, I think people look at entrepreneurship and they go, "Oh, that's risky." I don't really buy that. I think there's a way where you can make it not very risky. And so, it was very much a side project, passion project for the first, call it, 2.5 years that I was working on it. And we didn't quit our job and we didn't raise family and friends money until I was able to say and believe myself, "Listen, Danny, I would like you to invest $5,000 because I think with that $5,000, I have enough research and I have enough experience to suggest that I can outperform the S&P 500 with that money. So I
right,
think I can get you a better return with that $5,000 than you're going to be able to get from yourself if you put it into the S&P index fund." So I would not have had the comfort level asking people for money if I didn't have de-risk it and research the space and have enough of the things in place to actually feel that in my heart that I could get them a good return on their invested capital. So I had we not done that, I mean, we would have wasted 2.5 years learning all of those things. And it's just way riskier when you don't have a salary that's sort of keeping, your life together.
yeah,
Because what I've learned over the years is entrepreneurship is very much so how long can you stay alive? Like, if you stay alive, you open the opportunity for more good things to happen to you. Whereas if we started the company and quit our jobs on day one, there's 2.5 years of learnings that we would have just been burning capital. And maybe after a year and a half, you go, "Listen, we're out of money. We have to close it up." And then because you didn't make it to that, you didn't cross the chasm to where things start working. You don't put yourself in a position to succeed. So I'm very much so in the camp of don't just start a company and drop everything and jump into it, which I think we sort of glorify in society. I think it should be very slow. It should be very meticulous. And you shouldn't do it until you sort of know it's going to work. I don't think it needs to be as risky as people purport.
that's that's interesting that you think that is the best way to do it, because everybody else, I guess, on my podcast has been kind of on the opposite side there. And you see, sometimes in college they drop out, or it was in the Great Recession. This other guy started his and then they literally did risk everything for it. But you're saying kind of the opposite. It's very interesting there.
Yeah. And I think what that tells you is these things are so nonlinear and there's no
Yeah.
one way to do it. Um, on a personal basis, I just like have extremely low risk tolerance. Like I don't think I would have been happy or excited or interested in doing something that's had that much risk.
To it. Okay, so what happened to you guys like after you raised like 5 million bucks and I know you guys tried initially like reaching for the stars a little bit there, but then I watched that one of your podcasts, but then you kind of had to come back down to reality. So how did that change things for you?
Yeah, I think what are my thoughts here? So we raised capital, we had really fast growth, um, but we slowed growth in favor of profitability. And in doing so, we closed the top line year over year revenue growth in favor of making it a sustainable business that's default alive, and probably more of a private equity target than it is a venture target at this point, based on the top line revenue growth rate. But ultimately, like we had a challenge that a lot of people I think had is when we raised at the peak of 2021, it's a little bit of a bubble. It was a little bit of a crazy bull market run. And so when we raised that capital, the market went sideways within like 3 months. And so all venture capital liquidity had sort of dried up. It was really hard to get funding thereafter. We're like, okay, most people raise capital for 18 to last them 18 to 24 months. So if we raised money at the end of 2021, that means around the end of 2023, things are going to get pretty ugly in this space because everyone's going to be trying to raise money at the exact same time. So, sort of reading the tea leaves there, we moved pretty quickly to make sure we wouldn't be a statistic. And I feel very fortunate that we operate a company that profitability is even an option that's on the table for us. Like, I know plenty of companies where they went under, and it's not because they weren't incredible operators, and it wasn't because the idea was bad. It's simply that it was a business that was predicated, its existence was predicated on there being a future round of capital to support it. Think about it. There's a lot of companies where you have to burn, 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 burn for a while, then to come home and like reap those rewards. And the capital markets just like we're not there for them, where they couldn't raise capital despite it being a really interesting opportunity. So, I'm sort of loving life these days as to where we are because everything, we built a profitable company, sort of hackily. And as we sort of dial in the different processes and components of the business, it just feels like the sky's the limit and there's so much potential upside and opportunity for us.
So that's real cool. So this year, like you said, has been very great for you guys. You did like 10 million in sales, like lifetime sales, right? There, and you're also with Sabrina Carpenter now. I saw like on your Twitter,
Hmm.
and that's real cool.
Yeah.
So I guess like, what's it like after so many years? You're starting to reap the benefits, like you say.
Yeah. It's just more fun. Like
That's
it was just 2 years of just like locking in and being super stressed. And don't get me wrong, it's still there's still plenty of that, but I'm very much so like trying to remember to enjoy the good times when the good times are still the good times because it won't always be good times, which is a mouthful, but it's true. But like now, instead of focusing on just making sure that the company has a future, I get to focus on the things that I actually love, which is like marketing and growth and automation and stuff like that. It was just so much like focus on increasing revenue, slashing costs. Now that it's sort of in a stable position and it'd be pretty hard for us to go out of business in the near term. You get to start thinking about all of the crazy weird stuff that makes you go viral and gets you from one community into the next community. Um, and we also like consumer is such a fun industry. We get to work with the best brands. They're some of the coolest, sharpest operators. At this point, a lot of them are friends. And I think you find that a lot in entrepreneurship. It's sort of like an analyst class at an investment bank. You all start together, and then 5 years later, there's only a couple of you still there, but you're really tight with the couple that are still around. There's so many people that we like grew up in this industry with. And it starts business focused, but some of these people are just like lifelong friends and people that I love spending time with and love trading notes. And they're just excited and passionate about change. And they're doing it in their own right. We're doing it in our own right. But it's a really cool way to meet incredible people.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun now, and that you can enjoy it fully. So you mentioned you had some like crazy ideas maybe for the future. So what does the future look like for you? Because I know you tried in the past you tried like scaffolding that's a lot of fun. And you wanted to put like also I saw on your Twitter like on the top of trucks as well, not just on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like, what's the future that you're looking at for growing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I try not to make declarative statements on the future because I'm always wrong, and so the things just sort of happen. But as we look to the future, I think there's a couple of different opportunities. I think one that I will always sort of be interested in is going back to digital screens, and it would be pretty funny for that to come so full circle. But I do, in my heart of hearts, believe that in 50 years, all outdoor media will be largely digital, and will be bought and sold on exchanges in the same way that your Facebook ads and your Google ads are bought and sold. And so, if I believe that, I want to make sure we're positioned correctly to capitalize on that opportunity. And there's a lot of things to like about digital, right? There's no cost of goods sold with print and install. There's like on the fly creative tweaks. Oh, something viral happens, change the copy like right now to make it culturally relevant. There's so many different interesting things that we can do with digital assets. Granted, I think there's like a multi-$100 million opportunity on just the static side. So we'll see when and if we cross that chasm and revisit our digital roots. But um, I do think there's something interesting there over the long term of the digital form factor.
Wow, that's incredibly interesting all that you just said, and a lot of fun, a lot of new opportunity there, like still more lands to be discovered. So where do you see yourself maybe in 10 years, 20 years? Have you started another business, sold this one, or stayed with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It goes back to that I try not to plan too far ahead because
Yeah.
I'm usually wrong. But I feel like there's one of two things happens. One, this really works and I continue to get energy and love it, and it becomes a like a media channel, right? Like in the same way that TikTok and Twitter and Facebook are their own media channel. I think there's something interesting about that because it's leverage. You can, say I have a kid and he wants to start a direct to consumer watermelon company. Well, I can like help facilitate and build that dream, right? I think it's really interesting. There's something interesting about the ownership of a category to propel other subsequent things. The other option is we end up selling the business. And if that happens, I think regardless of at what valuation and how rich or not rich that makes me, it's going right into whatever's next. I think this is not so much about money for me. It's really just love of the game. It feels like one big game. And I want to win the game. I want to keep playing the game. It gives me so much energy. It gets me out of bed each morning. So and I'm not quite sure what this looks like in 10 years, but I think I'll be still in the scene one way or another.
Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing your billboards around, seeing how things have changed for you. And
Thank
as
you,
you
Danny.
continue to grow with yours, I'll grow this podcast as well a little bit. But yeah, that kind
We'll
of
get it
wraps
on
up
some billboards once it blows up. We'll get it on some
Yes, thank
billboards.
you. That'll be awesome to drive around, see myself there. All right, well, that kind of, wow, we went beyond our half hour, 40 minutes, but time really flies. So thank you, man. You've had a really cool story, some really interesting insights there. Thank you for that.
Of course. Thanks for
Take
having me
care.
on, Danny. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. All right. Oh.